Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll start this Bava Metzia, daf Kuf Yud Aleph 111. We're going to begin on Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, about 10 lines from the top by the two dots. So the Mishnah said, "Z'schir shois goyva kol halayla v'chol hayoyim." That when it comes to someone who is a worker for you, so the Mishnah began by saying that if he worked for you during the day, then you have the night time to pay him. If he worked for you at night, so then you have the whole day to pay him. However, schir shois, it says you can collect and you must pay him all night and all day. Okay, so we'll have to understand this a little bit better. So machlokes over here. So the Gemara says as follows. According to Rav, schir shois diyoim gavik kol hayoim. If a worker worked for just a couple of hours for you during the day, so you actually have to collect, you have to pay him during that time on that day. So let's say he worked for you from 9 in the morning to 11 in the morning, and sunsets 5 p.m., so you have to pay him before 5 p.m. Schir shois d'layla gavik kol halayla. And again, if he worked a couple of hours for you at night, say at 9 p.m. until 10:30 or a couple hours, so then you have the rest of the night to pay him. Shmuel Eimer says no. Schir shois diyoim gavik kol hayoim. It's true, I do agree that if he worked for a couple hours in the day, you have to pay him then. However, schir shois d'layla gavik kol halayla v'chol hayoim. The chiddush of Shmuel is that if you worked at night a little bit, so not only do you have that night, but you also have the next day. Okay, so let's look in this Rashi over here. Schir shois d'layla gavik kol halayla uk'shel amud hashachar over mishum bal tolin. Once it's a amud hashachar, then already you violated the issur of bal tolin of delaying payment. Okay. Shmuel says that if you work during the night, so then you have the rest of that night and the next day. Midika amrit ve'ein layla hoylech achar hayoim, and the reason is typically the night doesn't go after the day. Avol schir shois, that's normal. In other words, if let's say you have a guy who worked the entire day, so we're not going to say that, so you're supposed to pay him that night, so maybe the whole night should go after the next day. That we don't say, because you only have that night to pay. Again, if the guy worked for you all day, because it's a different date. Avol schir shois d'layla, if you only worked a couple hours at night, gavik kol halayla, you have the whole night, v'chol hayoim, and also you have the entire day too. Why? Shahayoim hoyel achar halayla. In that situation, the day goes after the night. Hoyel schirasu b'leil zeh lo dami l'schir yoim de'esmol she'negayva el kol halayla. As we said, it's like considered like a different calendar date, and therefore, because of that, when it comes to schir halayla, that's where there's an exception, that if you worked a couple hours at night, so then you can not only do you have the ability to pay him, of course, that night, but you're given a little bit more flexibility to have the next day too. At least according to the Shita Shmuel. So now we understand the Shitas. Let's see the next piece of the Gemara. Tanat. Schir shois gavik kol halayla v'chol hayoim. So Tifta the Rav. Our Mishnah seems very clear. It's like the Shita of Shmuel. So Amalach Rav with Stad and Katani. You have to read it like this. Schir shois diyoim gavik kol hayoim. Schir shois d'layla gavik kol halayla. That, which is the sheet of Rav. So basically you have to change the language of the Mishnah a little bit. Tanan. Hoya schir Shabbos, schir Chodesh, schir Shana, schir Shavua. So let's say this person is not working for just a day. He's working for longer blocks of time. Like for example, for a week, a month, a year, 7 years. So yoytze b'yoyim. So let's say he finishes up that day. So gavik kol hayoim, he has the whole, you can collect that whole day, which is like a schir shois. Yotzei b'layla, if he finishes in the middle of the night, gavik kol halayla v'chol hayoim. So we see clearly, like the Shita of Shmuel again. So Melech Rav Tanoihi. Okay, you're right. There are opinions that say this Malchus Tanaim. Decide schir shois diyoim gavik kol hayoim. Schir shois d'layla gavik kol halayla de Rabbi Yehuda. So you see, I can hold like the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda that holds you only have that night. Shimon Omer, schir shois diyoim gavik kol hayoim. Schir shois d'layla gavik kol hayoim v'chol hayoim. So in fact, we see this Malchukas, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, and therefore Rav and Shmuel, even though we are able to prove that there's opinions against Rav, but he can fit like the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. Mekanom. From here we're able to derive Kol Kovish Sachar Over Behave Shemus. Anyone who ends up withholding payment, you're going to violate 5 sins, ba'aseh, as well as not only 5 negative prohibitions, but also 1 aseh. We'll see if that's in fact true in a second. But these are the psukim. Mishum bal tashoik es reyacha, withholding from your friend. Mishum bal tigzol, stealing. Mishum bal tashoik sachir ani, withholding the wages of a poor. Mishum bal tolin, mishum bal yoima titan schar, the day you pay him. Mishum loy sabel of a shemesh, sun shouldn't go down. Now the problem, as the Gemara says, is hani deika biyama leika b'leila, deika b'leila leika biyama. What are you talking about? Some of these psukim are about day, and some of them are at night. So how can you violate all 5? The answer is you're right. You can't violate all 5 in one shot. This is coming to tell you, says Rashi, you're right. You can never find one person violating all 5 in one shot. El Hachikamer, Averus Kol Hashemos Halol B'Shem Skiratain. All of these psukim are related to not paying. Yesh Behem B'Skiris Laila, Yesh Behem B'Skiris Yom. You're right. Some of them are for the night, sometimes for the day. So you can't violate all 5 in one action. But it just, in general, is showing the severity of withholding wages. Okay, so that's what it means. So Ezehu Oishik ve'ezehu Gezel. So we have the language of Gezel, which Rashi says is mashma she'anso biyadai, miyadai, mamish, tfei Oishik. It sounds like you forcibly grab something more than Oishik. Like the pasuk says in Sefer Shmuel, v'yigzol as achanis miyad hamitzri, that he stole the spear from the Egyptian, etc. So it seems like it's more of a physical act by stealing it. So Rav Chisda says, Lech v'shuv, zehu oishik. Yesh l'cha biyadi v'eini noisin l'cha zehu gezel. So a person says, go and come back, so that's like withholding payment. The other person says, it's in my hand, but I'm not going to give it to you, that's worse. And that's Gezel. So Masker Rav Sheshes, Hazel Oishik, Shechibol of Torah carbon. What is considered to be an Isser? And Rashi Zal Karchach, Oishik the Kaferle, who made the Chayvi love Bataris Kohanim carbon, Shvua. Obviously, has to be some denial. So we say, Domi to be Kadin, says the Gemara, the Kaferle Memoina. So we see Oishik is denying money, but you said it means just come back later. El Rav Sheshes, Nisati v'cha, I'm going to give it to you, Zehu Oishik. Yeshach b'yadi, it's in my hands. Ve'enin oisin l'cha, I'm not going to give you Zehu Gezel. So Maskav Abaya, Ezu Gezel shechiv l'lav Torah carbon, Domi b'kadan binan, the hakafar le b'mayne. So again, it has to be comparable where there's a concept of denial. El Rabbi Loi sacharticha be'oilam zehu oishik. A person who just straight out says, you never worked for me. What are you talking about? You're not my employee. That's oishik. Zehu gezel. However, someone who says that, yeah, you didn't work for me, and I'm just not going to give it to you, that's gezel. Or nesati v'cha, I gave it to you already. Okay. Or Rav Sheshes maishna oishik, dekashli maishna gezel doi kashle. Why was he so against Oishik? They asked the Kashmir on Gezel. So Amalek Gezel, the Gazi v'Hader Kafre, says Rashi. Kolzman shlui tabu bebeistin. As long as you weren't, you didn't go to Beistin. Olavenu ve'natzmo. This is something which is between you. Haya goizlo, you stole. V'yomer enu noisin l'cha. I'm not going to give it to you. Because tabu bebeistin kafar. Then you denied it. V'nishma l'oilam gezel ikri el imkein omer enu noisin l'cha. Okay. So, again, we're talking about by Gezel, the Gazli he stole, the Hadar Kafre, then he denied it. If you'll Oishik Namid Hadar Kafre, by Gezel also, maybe he can say the same thing and then deny. He says he denied it which is mashma where originally he admitted. Of a gabi oishik miksiv o b'oishik o ashaksiv shashko kfar, which means the oppressing is his denial. Rabbi Omer zehu oishik zehu gezel. The truth is there is no difference between the two. So this is the second answer. Not that there's necessarily really any significant difference between the two, but it's just to tell you that you're going to be over an additional lav. Says the next Mishnah. Says the Masnisim. Echad sachar yoim. So actually, let's slow down. Let's look at question 1. So if someone worked for a little bit of time, so this is an interesting answer because it's not so clear based on what we just saw that this is correct. Sachir shoys the yom gov kol yom. That we agree with. It says all it says here is Sachir shoys the laila gov kol laila. It's really machlokas. And then 1b Sachir Shabbos Sachir Chaydish Imasa overlap as far as this. So Yatzib Yom gov kol yom. Yatzib laila gov kol laila. But again, it really should say machlokas, but for some reason it doesn't. Okay. Question TB8. Sachir shoyis matai oivren olav b'bal tolin o b'yoymo titin scharoi. Bal tolin o b'yoymo titin scharoi. Gomer b'yoyim misham kol hayoyim. Im gomer malacha b'laylo yachal hashem kol laylo v'over b'yoyim haba. Okay. I think it's basically the same questions that we had before. Okay, that's Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, and that is TB8. Okay. Let's see the next mission. Whether we're talking about hiring a worker, or an animal, or renting vessels, so there's an issue of b'yomatitin schalai. Actually, I'm not sure if that was necessarily answered already with the previous question. B'yomatitin schalai v'yeshbo mishum lo solon pulas skirit chad biker. So the Mishnah says that you can violate both of these isurim. Doesn't make any difference if we're talking about hiring a worker. It's also an animal or kalim. Same din. So Amosai, when is this said? Bisman shetavoi is only when you're coming to collect. Lo tavu, but let's say it doesn't come to collect. Ain't no over love. Then you're not going to be over. It's only when the person actually wishes to collect. As Rashi says, the chsiv itcha medaitcha v'lo medaitoi. Okay. So if he doesn't come to collect, you're not over love. Him chahu eitzel cheveni. If he removed himself by a store owner, says Rashi, niskan me'etzloi v'amido eitzel cheveni. He places himself by a store owner, shahayib hoyel, it's a worker, sarach liknus peiris mecheveni. He needs to purchase fruits from a store owner. Yermelo bal habayis l'cheveni. The guy says to the store owner, tainli b'dinner peiros v'yolai l'shalim. Give to me a dinner worth of fruits, and I will pay you back. So basically, you're borrowing from a store. You're getting produce. So that's what he says. And then he eitzel shulchani enu oiver. Or let's say shulchani. So again, he's not going to be oiver, even though he's supposed to make payment. But over here, withholding payment or removing himself from payment, he's not going to be over these isurim. Schir bezmanoi nishba v'naitel. If a person who's a sacher, who's being held, working for time, so you should make a shmua, and then he takes. And we're just going to explain what that means. Over zmano eno nishba v'naitel. And if the time passes, then he doesn't make a shmua. Okay. Im yesh edim shetavu. Let's say there are witnesses that he claimed before. Okay, again, all of this hopefully will be explained in the Gemara. Rashi keeps saying, Mefarish b'Gemara. Okay, so ger toishiv yesh mishum b'yom atitin scharai ve'ein bo mishum lo solon pulos skarit chad biker. So when it comes to a ger toshiv, who's a ger toshiv? So Rashi explains he's makabel upon himself not to worship idols, but he does eat nevelos and treifas. So he's not a yid, but he's not an oived avodah zarah, and therefore we take upon himself different dinim above that of an akum, and therefore because of that, even though he would not violate, we'll see why, lo solin, but there is an isser of biyamatitin schara. So mani masnisin lo tanakama. It's not, our mission is not like the tanakama. The miachecha, because of based on miachecha. We'll see what that means. Rabbi Yosi Rabbi Yehuda, and also our mission cannot be like Rabbi Yosi Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, so Mahi, what exactly is this machlokas that we're going to say that they don't fit into our Mishnah? The Sanya, as we continue to Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Miachecha, when it says holding back wages from your brother, so prat lacherim. Says Rashi, lo sashik skarani ve'evian meachecha prat lacherim or b'kacham. So there's no isser of withholding wages from an akum. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't pay them, but there's no isser. Gercha, when the pasuk says gercha, ze ger tzedek. Someone who's mamash a ger tzedek, that individual is a riboy, and therefore you're not allowed to withhold wages from him. B'sharecha, those in your gates, that oichel nevelos. So the Tanakama hold clearly by ger toshev, it violates everything, which is not like our Mishnah. Our Mishnah split it and said it doesn't. We don't have this violation of both psukim. When it comes to a ger toshev, it's only biyom titin scharo, but the din of loy solon doesn't apply to a ger toshev. Now, according to the Tanakama, we see that there is. I only know if you hire a person. So when it comes to anything in your land, which means any form of rental or whatever it may be of usage, you need to pay right away. Therefore, again, even the Solon. Mekan Omer, from here we derive that Echad Schar Adam, Echad Schar Behem, Echad Schar Kalim, Yeshma Mishum B'Yom Titin Schar, Yeshma Mishum Baltol and Pula Sachir. So we see clearly a ger toshev violates both, which is not like our Mishnah. So that's the problem because of Baratzach. Rabbi Yosi Rabbi Yehuda Aimer ger toshev Yeshma Mishum B'Yom Titin Scharo Ve'ein Bo Mishum Lo Solon. Now that sounds a lot like our Mishnah when it comes to a ger toshev. Behema v'kelim ein bohen el mishum lo sashik bovad. The problem is the issue of behema and kelim, which our Mishnah is mashma that it doesn't make any difference if it's a person, behema or kelim, it's the same. So money. So yitanakama de artzach kasha ger toshev. When it comes to ger toshev, we have a kasha because according to the Tanakama, you violate everything. But our Mishnah says that a ger toshev doesn't violate l'sol. Rabbi Yosi kasha behema v'kelim. Our Mishnah says that behema and kelim there is a violation as well. So Rava, hi Tana Tana de Rabbi Shmuel. Actually, it's a different Tana altogether. The Tana de Rabbi Shmuel, Echad Schar Adam, Echad Schar Behem, Echad Schar Kalim, the Yishmim Mishum B'Yom Titin Schar or Mishum Bal Loy Solon. So first of all, we see that he fits into our Mishnah because our Mishnah says that it's not just a person, but also Adam and Kalim. Ger Toshev Yeshmim Mishum B'Yom Titin Schar Ve'ein Bo Mishum Bal Solon. So that's just exactly like our Mishnah. Okay. So there's actually a few opinions over here. So my Talmud Tanakama, why did the Tanakama say this drasha de miachecha to say that it excludes an akum? Gomer sacher sacher. It's because he learns out a gzer shava of sacher sacher. What is that? It says Rashi, ksiv hacha lo sashik sachir, ksiv skir yoim lo son pulu sachir. Ma kan ger toisha behema v'kelim israbi includes them. B'taris kohanim nami ger toshev behema v'kelim. Okay. Rabbi Yosi. So therefore, according to the opinion of the Tanakama, he says that it includes a ger toshev completely. Rabbi Yosi Rabbi Yehuda, who says that a ger toshev there is no din of Baal Tolan, which is, at least that part he fits into our Mishnah. Lo gomer sacher sacher. Because Sacher Sacher would tell you again that all the violations should apply to a ger toshev. It doesn't learn out that Gzer Shava. So Nihi, granted, Dol Gomer Sacher Sacher, Behema Kelim Mishum B'Yom Titin Schar Nami L'Chayev. So why does he disagree with the ratio of our Mishnah regarding other Behem and Kalim? So Tani Rabbi Chanina, because on you the pasuk says, "Vosava olav hashemesh," regarding the sun not being able to set. Ki anihu, because he's poor. Mi shehein boin lidiandius yeshirus. This whole din of paying is only referring to a human being who is shaykh to potentially become rich, shaykh to become poor. So therefore, a vessel or an animal don't fall into the category of being rich or poor. We don't have a rich dog, right? A rich ox. So therefore, and also a rich bottle of water, right? It doesn't work like that. So therefore, the pasuk is dafka talking about Adam. The Tanakama, Haiki Anihu Mayavidaway, because according to the Tanakama, they do include Behem and Kalim. So what do they do with this pasuk? Comes to tell you that when it comes to in a pinch, says Rashi, Niskru Shnei Poalim, you hire two workers, Echad and Echad Asher, then Biadalitan El Echad Mehen Hani Kaidim. If you only have enough money to pay one of them, you should pay the poor person first. Obviously, he needs it more. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Ahu, it's true, but we can learn that out. I already learned out from that pasuk. But Tanakama, one of the psukim is to say that a poor person comes before the rich. That an ani comes before an evyoin. What is an evyoin? So Rashi says, Ma'unim ani. Someone who's an ani is poor, but an evyon is even worse. He's lower, he's worse off than an ani. And because of this, he's been this way for a while, and we're going to see he's not embarrassed to keep asking and asking. You need to know that you give to an ani before an asher, and you need another pasuk to say that you give to an ani before an evyon, even though evyon is worse off. When it comes to an evyon, he's not embarrassed to keep asking for money, because he's been this way for his whole life, basically. A rich person, the kasev l'mitvei. When it comes to a rich person he's embarrassed to ask for money because he already has a lot of money, so he's embarrassed to ask for his wages. Amalo. So maybe a poor person does not come before a rich person. Yashmin and ashir mishum dolot sarchle. A rich person doesn't need the money. The Tana Didan, our Tana, Manavshach. If we're going to learn out this Gzer Shava to compare Ger Toishiv to regular, and then if that would be the case, I feel Ger Toishiv Nami. He also should be a violation of the psukim for Ger Toishiv. V'loyo of Sacher. If you don't learn it out, so Behem v'Kalim Manole. How does he know Taka Behem and Kalim? There's also an Isser. So Oilam Loyo Sacher. He doesn't. Shani Hasam Diamar Kra, because the pasuk says Solon Pulas Sacher Itcha Ad Boiker. What does it mean, itcha? Kol shepulasai itcha, says Rashi. Kra yiseru, there's an extra pasuk, and it's all of your work is with you. I feel behema v'kalim. So therefore it's going to include even animals and vessels. Ihachi, I feel ger toishav nami. So then why don't we also include the ger toishav? So makar reyacha v'lo ger toishav. It's actually coming to exclude the ger toishav. Ihachi, I feel behema v'kalim nami. Haksiv itcha. So Behema and Kalim is an inclusion. However, Reacha excludes the Ger Toishav. So Mari Yisrael Rabbis Behema Kalim Haitzi Ger Toishav. Maybe we should do it the other way around. Maybe we should include the Ger Toishav and exclude Behema and Kalim. No. Mistarber Behema and Kalim Havli Rabbis. Better to include the Behema and the Kalim. Why? Shechein Yesh Mechal Momoin Reacha. Because it falls under the category of your friend's money. Ger Toishav and Mechal Momoin Reacha. So therefore, because of it's a better fit into the psukim of Losashik Esriyacha, is probably talking about something in which is possessions, like Adam v'Kalim, Behema v'Kalim rather, but not Ger Toshim. But Tanakam and Me'achecha, Hai Reyacha Mayavdale. So what do they do with the pasuk Reyacha, which doesn't exclude Ger Toshim? So Huma Boyalel Gasan Reyacha v'Loyam Aleki. The whole issue is dafka to your friend. You shouldn't hold back but not to an amaleki. Amaleki miachecha nafka. We learn out miachecha that we saw in the very top line over top. Pralacherim excludes an akum, and it certainly is going to exclude rather an amaleki. So chad mishra oishkoi v'chad mishra goizloi. One is to say that not only are you allowed to withhold, but you can even steal. Meaning gazelo, to be matering, stealing from an amaleki, mishum doloi tarech bei, because there was no tircha in the matter. Notice he didn't do anything for you. But if he actually worked for you, maybe you should pay him. At least there, the money never went into his hands. But if he already has it, maybe if it's in the Maleki's hands, then you can't take it. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, what does he do with it? Rav Asi, even if he did a very simple task, this pool shois, he only worked for a short amount of time, just removing a few grapes. Nonetheless, you can still oiver mishum bal solon. You can still be oiver bal solon, and Taisus on the bottom explains what the chiddush is there. V'idach, how do you know that even if it's a small amount? The love who noises nasha nafka. Davar meiser nasha love. We're talking about something in which is a person who is meiser nefesh. In other words, even if it's a small amount, but if he actually has to climb up a ladder, a cherry picker to go and remove these grapes, so that's something which is dangerous, and therefore it doesn't matter even if it's a small amount. There, he would still be muchayt, have to pay him on time. As we continue to Kuf Yud Beis Amud Aleph, V'idach, how does he know? What does he do with this pasuk? Hahu meboyel v'sanya ve'elav hu noises nafsho. So what do we learn out regarding this? What is the reason why this guy climbs up or is hanging off a ladder? So he can potentially die at work. It's because he's getting paid. Says Rashi, fine. Another pshat is kol kovish sachar ki'u noitel nashim imenu. It's like you've taken away his life. Now, what exactly does that mean? You're taking away his life. So this Rashi says, "Upligi b'ho Rab Huna Rab Chisda b'Mishmaisai." Chad oimer nafsho shel sachir neneshalav ki'u hargo. It's like you killed the guy. V'chad oimer nafsho shel gazlan, of the stealer. Higilucha kosiv shigar misel atzmo. He's causing death for himself. So the fact that you're the withholder or the theft of a person's money, so you're the one that's causing the death. The kol kovish sachar skill noitel nafshin menu, either because you did an avera or this person was moiser nefesh for you. That's the pshat. I think there's a question that says that somewhere. Maybe it's TA8. Right, TA8. Let's look at that really quick. Kol kovish sachar sachar kilo noitel nafshin menu nafshel shomi. So put the Gemara, E shel gazlan o shel nigzol. Okay, so that is TA8. There's a bunch of other questions which we will get to. Rav Huna Rav Chisda, Chadar Menavshel shel gazlan, the Chadar Menavshel shel nigzol. So this is actually straight Gemara, not just the Rashi, which explains it, which we're going to see this in the Gemara too. So Mandiar Menashel shel gazlan, that you killed the gazlan, that you're basically causing death for the gazlan, or he's killing himself. Dechsiv al tigzul dal, don't steal from the poor. Kidalhu yal tidakche ani bishar, do not oppress him. Uksiv ki Hashem yoriv rivam, Hashem will fight them. V'kaves koivehem nafesh, which basically means that they're going to be killed. Says Rashi, afim dalhu, even if he's poor, ve'en lo ezer. Al tigzalenu, don't steal from him. Okay. Mandir menafsha shel nigzal dechsiv kin archois koil baitzea botza. This is the way of anyone who steals. As nefesh ba'ol of yikach, he's stealing their soul. So v'yidach Nam yiksiv es kevet es nefesh ba'olav yikach, which sounds like he's harming the person, the victim. So ba'olav the hashda, we're talking about the one who is now the owner, which means the one who actually stole it. Which sounds like we're talking about the person who committed the crime. The crime is that you were noitel nefesh, that you harmed the victim as like you killed the victim. Again, that's TA8. Obviously, we're going to stop there, but let's look at a whole bunch of other questions. Okay, let's start off with question 2. Ki anihu. Ki anihu. So what do we learn out from this pasuk ki anihu? So as we said, it's possible it's only someone who's shaykh to become an ani. So chatana gamer minei de'ein b'schar kelim behema mishum bal tolen shein boin l'neanias. It's not shaykh for a vessel to become poor or rich. So therefore the whole din is to exclude behema v'kelim. Alternatively, that when it comes to payment, you have to pay the poor person before the wealthy person. That's the other pshat. Okay, question 3. So, what is that coming to teach? So either itcha l'daitcha, we didn't see this yet. Lafuki shloi tavoy, if he doesn't claim it, so then you're not going to be chayev. Okay, that one we saw that in the Mishnah, but not from how we saw it in the pasuk. Idcha sheish l'cha lafuki she'ein lo. Again, that's going to be in next daf. Idcha she'etz l'cha lafuki. This one we have dimichahu eitzal chenveni. So if you again have a store owner in which you were supposed to pay and then you didn't, which is all the way again based on our Mishnah. So let's hold off on that. We're really going to be seeing that question in tomorrow's daf. Question TA7. So we actually had this in yesterday's daf, which is, I'm not sure, I didn't mark it. I did mark it. I just didn't mark it here. So it's totally on what the shliach said. This is yesterday's daf. Fine. So we're not going to go through that again. Adkan.